warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Aiman bin Kamangdin and my metric number is 192000099.
Hai, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Haris bin Johari. My matrix number is 192000098.
Hai, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Faiman bin Muhammad and my matrix number is 192000058.
Hai, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Ashraf bin Amran and my matrix number 192000081.
Hi, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good morning. My name is Muhammad Daniel bin Mokhtar and my matric number is 1900069.
In this video, we will explain about perceptual aspect and behavior.
There have 5 subtopics in this chapter, which are organizational culture, factors that affect perception, organizing perceptual data, perceptual distortion, and managing the perception process. So please watch this video till the end while your IOB book open. The first subtopic will start at page 12.
Okay, now I will tell you about organization culture. What is an organizational culture? Okay, so basically it's a way of operating in a company. It refers to the collection of assumptions, beliefs, values and norms that are shared by members of the organization that have resulted in an action of norm within the organization. The culture may have been created by its members or may have evolved over time. A culture may exist across an entire organization or the atmosphere may exist within a particular division, branch or department. A good and successful organization culture is a crucial prerequisite for excellence. Next, I'm going to explain about the importance of organization culture. Organization culture is very important in an organization. Without it, the company could not become an understanding company. The first importance of organization culture is help to define each person's role and its boundary. The second is this can give an organizational identity to employees. After that, it also can generate commitment, large and one own self-interest. Next, organization culture can be an act as control mechanism that guide and shapes the attitude and behavior of employees. Furthermore, organization culture can be an entity that moves the corporation into a productive action or destruction. And last but not least, it creates loyalty with both staff and customers. So that's some of the importance of organization culture. So next, I will explain to you guys about home method. An ideal organizational culture can be developed by using the home method. The H for history, that we should develop a sense of history. O is for oneness, where we should create a sense of oneness. M is for membership, where we can promote a sense of membership. And the last one is letter E for exchange. We should increase exchange among members. Association is mechanism by which people organize and interpret their sensory experience in order to provide their environment its meaning. Perception refers to perception of reality by individual. It is a person's own view of the universe. The same thing can be interpreted by various people in various ways. It implies the people can look at the same things and yet interpret it differently. when dealing with their subordinate or administrator tend to avoid having a great interperception. This dilemma is made more completely and the effect that different people see the same situation as being different. Perception is very important to study of OB because people's behavior is focused on their perception and not a reality itself.
Okay guys, now I'm gonna explain about the factor that affect or influence perception. First of all, for your information, there are 3 factors that affect perception. I will explain one by one, so listen carefully. The first factor is characteristic of the perceived. A person needs, abilities, past experience, habits, personality, value, and attitudes may influence the perception process. A person will make perception based on his experience. The second factor is characteristic of the target, aka object or event. The physical characteristic, appearance, and action of other individuals in situation can affect the interpretation of the situation. The target is not viewed separately. The interaction between goals as against the context would have an effect on perception. Relate objects where there is a propensity to group together will also influence perception. Some people could make a wrong decision just by looking at the physical appearance and action of the perceived individual. The different characteristics of the event or object can be grouped into 3 categories, which are figure, ground perception, proximity, or closeness and similarity. I will tell you about figure ground perception first. What we see and see depends on how we distinguish a statistic from its general context. Basically, it means when we see a situation or a scene, some aspect seems to come forward and stand out, and then the rest of the stimuli seem to be less relevant and recede into the background. For example, a pretty girl among a group of plain girls will be noticed more than the others. Some people stand out more than others in a certain work situation. A person who's sarcastic at work will be more noticeable than the others. Next, proximity or closeness. Objects that are similar to each other appear to be viewed together rather than separately. This could be in terms of physical proximity or proximity to time. For example, students in classroom are seen as a group and not as individuals of their own. A person who happens to be at the wrong place at the wrong time will be perceived as being involved in the particular incident. People, objects, or occurrences that are identical in color, shape, and scale appear to be grouped together. The greater the similarity, the greater it is viewed as a collective group. The last characteristic is characteristic of the situation or environment. Physical, social, and organizational settings of the situation or occurrence can also affect perception. For example, a friendly gesture of a woman at a nightclub may be perceived differently than if the same woman does so in the office setting. The essence of the environment influence what is viewed as acceptable or natural. For example, a manager might go unnoticed in jeans and t-shirt at the company picnic, but he perceived to be not normal if he dressed that way in the office. Okay, there are all three factors in influence perception.
So now I will explain about organizing perceptual data. What is organization of perceptual data? It is the manner in which we arrange the knowledge we obtain from our world that will impact our expectation and affect the significance given to people and events. There are four tendencies that influence perception: figure and ground, set, result, and attribution. Explain these tendencies one by one, so listen carefully. First, figure and ground, the tendency to distinguish or differentiate a central object from its surroundings. What we see depends on how we separate the statistic from its general context. The main factor in the precision of vision is the ability to differentiate the figure from the ground. In this situation, the figure is the dominant feature and the ground is its surrounding. For example, a manager who notices a worker relaxing in the chair with closed eye may think that he is not doing his work. He may have overlooked the pile of work on the worker's desk and his proposed closing, which might indicate that the worker had all work all night. Next is set. It is a tendency to respond to a situation in terms of prior information received rather than in terms of what actually exists. This is where people tend to perceive what they expect to perceive. For example, if a new employee is told the new manager is friendly, the employee will see a friendly manager and respond in a friendly way. While praising the performance of a worker, the manager was told by his supervisor that the worker is untrustworthy and often did skip work. Thus, throughout the session, the manager would have negative impression on the worker concerned. The third one is result. It is a German word meaning shape, configuration and arrangement of relationship in a total situation. This is where an individual rearrange the pattern of thought into new configuration. Is an arrangement of thought into new holistic patterns. It is a tendency to avoid the discomfort of unorganized knowledge by assigning an overarching meaning to it. For example, a manager asks his subordinate to stay back after normal working hours. The subordinate said yes, but the manager noticed a look of frustration and raised the tone of voice as a sign of unwillingness. The last but not least is attribution. It is a tendency to try to understand the action of an individual or event by interpreting them as a consequence of such environmental factor. This is the method in which we attempt to understand the reason for a person's actions. It is an explanation of the cause of the action. It is an attempt to understand the why of action. When a person observes action and starts to draw conclusion, he claims he make an assignment. For example, a new worker's low performance is said to be because he is going through adjustment period in learning his job.
I will explain to you for this subtopic. It is perceptual distortion or obstacles. I've listed several distortions in this slide. First, halo effect. It happens when we allow a single feature to override all other characteristics when assessing an individual. It also happens when one characteristic of a person or circumstance is used to create an overall perception of the individual or situation. For example, an employee who always at work before everyone arrive or leave may be considered a hardworking person. Next is stereotyping. It happens when an individual is given certain characteristics that are generally associated with the group from which the individual originated. This is where people classify others on the basis of the community that they belong to. Popular stereotyping is like age and gender. It happens when we assume that all the people in the certain group are the same. For example, when we make comments like all men are strong and brave, all the workers lack ambition and motivation, overweight people are lazy and slow, engineers are good at math. Stereotypes may be accurate or maybe not accurate. Third, selective perception. It is a tendency to find a situation or individual that is compatible with one's beliefs, values, and needs. It is a visual distortion since a person only interpreted a situation from a single point of view without taking the entire picture or situation into account. This person may be biased in passing judgment or assessment. It happens when people perceive selectively what they see on the basis of their preferences, context, experience, and attitude. They see what they want to see. For example, when the managers asked by the top management to identify the key problems that affect the business operation, they tend only to select problems that are consistent with their work assignment, such as marketing manager will point the problem for sales, the human resources manager will point the problem to the employees, the finance manager will view it as a financial problem. The next obstacle is perceptual defense. It happens when our emotions scream knowledge that contradicts our beliefs and values. People prefer to choose information that supports their point of view and choose not to consider the contrary information. It's a perceptual device that protects us from negative emotions, running away from the reality or from the evidence. Individuals can misinterpret information that is inconsistent with their needs, values, and beliefs. People just hear what they want to hear rather than what they think, and see what they want to see. As an example, a top management fails to recognize the signals that the organization is in financial trouble and think that all is well. Then, projection, the assignment of the personal attributes of the perceptor to the target under observation, the assigning of personal characteristics to other people. It is a tendency to assign one's own traits to others. It's a defense mechanism. The traits that we consider to be undesirable are projected to another human. This is where people sometimes believe that others are just like themselves. For example, an honest storekeeper who perceives others as honest may find the stocks disappearing, or a chairman who thinks that an issue has been resolved and perceives that the company members to feel the same way may be surprised to find that he is voted out. After that is expectancy. It is a propensity for someone to expect another to cause the person to act in a manner consistent with those expectations. This is where we attempt to justify our views of reality, no matter how complicated they may be. Our expectation of another person make that person behave in a way that meets expectation. These expectations can have negative and positive implications. The positive case is called the Pygmalion effect. People's perception or belief influence their actions and performance, so they will try to make their expectations come true. For example, a parent expects that a child's action in a proper manner will affect the child's behavior, and the negative case is known as the golem effect. Example, a manager who has low expectation of his subordinates will cause a loss of results. The last one is contrast effects, where it happens when the estimation of the attributes of an individual is affected by other people that have recently been experienced. For example, a candidate in an interview will obtain a favorable assessment if he were preceded by a mediocre candidate, and a less favorable assessment if he were preceded by strong applicants.
I'm going to explain the last subtopic in this chapter. It is managing the perception process. As a member in an organization, we should learn how to manage our perception process. In this slide, I have listed 6 ways on how to manage the perception process. First, we should have a high level of self-awareness. As already made clear, individual needs, experience, and expectation will all affect perception. The successful manager understands this and is able to identify when he is inappropriately distorting a situation because of such perceptual tendencies. Next, seek information from various sources to confirm or disconfirm personal impression of a situation. The successful manager minimizes the bias of personal perception by seeking out the viewpoints of others. These insights are used to gain additional perspective on situations and the problems or opportunities they represent. Then, be empathetic where we can be able to see a situation as is perceived by other people. As is understood, different people look at the same situation differently. The successful manager rises above the personal impressions and tries to understand problems as felt by other people. After that, avoid common perceptual distortion that bias our views of people or situation. Perceptual distortion include the use of stereotypes and halo effect, as well as selective perception and projection. Successful managers are self-disciplined and sufficiently aware that the adverse impact of this distortion is minimized. The last one is avoid inappropriate attribution. A person has a tendency to explain why events happen the way they did or why people behave as they did. The successful manager is wise enough to establish the real reasons for the things that happen and avoid the tendency of making quick or inappropriate attribution. So, for the conclusion, I can conclude that organizational culture will develop even without your input. But in the absence of the guidance, it may not be healthy or productive. Keep these 3 basic techniques in mind when developing your company culture: communication, recognition, and action. By following the steps in this guide, you can improve communication with employees, start creating a culture of recognition, and ensure that all members of your team put your culture into action.